Welcome to Lecture 6. Today's topic is sexual harassment, and I'm going to give you a bit of the legal background to the study that you read about in Rudman and Borgita. So under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, which was passed in 1964, it's illegal for employers to discriminate on the basis of sex, race, color, national origin, and religion. Therefore, women can sue for sex discrimination. The courts have decreed that sexual harassment is a form of sex discrimination because it has disparate impact on women, meaning it affects women more than men. When we think about sexual harassment, we often picture it as a quid pro quo type of situation. For example, if you have sex with me, I'll give you a job, or I'll promote you, or I'll give you an A for the course. But actually, surveys show this is the least common form of sexual harassment, affecting at most maybe about 10% of women. Unwanted sexual attention is more common. It affects about a quarter of working women. Involves treating women as sex objects by talking suggestively, leering at them, grabbing them inappropriately, or acting in a lewd manner. Here's some examples. Maybe a teacher tells a student standing in the lunch line she looks hot that day. A dentist shuts the door, and after an injection of Novocaine to numb the patient, he thrusts his tongue down a teenage female patient's throat. A hypnotist lewdly demands that you sit on his lap after he puts you under. You went to him for something like smoking cessation, but it turns out he's a cad. Your graduate advisor tells you to bring in naked pictures of yourself. You think he's joking until one day his hands slip under your shirt and he cops a feel while you're entering data from a study that you had done together. At that point, you press charges. So all of these are things that actually happened to me, and some of them seem kind of minor compared to other weird things. Like I can't count how many times a man exposed himself to me in a public place, whether it's a park or a public bathroom, even a woman's bathroom, or on the subway. Even when I lived in Paris, which was kind of particularly frightening because my French wasn't that great. So it's, you have difficulty reporting when weird things happen to you when you're a stranger in a strange land, right? One time I was driving back home from London to my house in Paris when a man drove up on my bumper while I was stopped at a red light so that he could ask me out. So he just literally kind of froze me in place and then ran up to the window and asked me to go have a drink with him, which, it just seemed incredibly aggressive. So this is other things that have happened to me I didn't think too much about until that thing that happened to me in grad school, because really that just utter betrayal of my mentor gave me what feminists call a click experience that led me to become a gender researcher. And what feminists call a click experience is just sort of when something jolts you awake out of your false sense of security. And for me, my false sense of security was that as a woman in graduate school, I would be valued more for my brains than anything else. But in fact, it just seemed like wherever I went, I was going to carry my female body with me. And consequently, I started to understand that I really needed to study gender bias. Back to types of harassment. The most common form of sexual harassment is gender harassment. It affects at least 50% of women. It involves purposefully demeaning women by calling them sexualized names, telling sexist jokes, maybe showing them kind of pornographic images, or sending them graphic texts or emails. And the motive behind it is as a means of intimidation. So I'll never forget telling my female students in my gender course that they were lucky not to have to endure obscene phone calls, which was a chronic occurrence for me as a young woman. And often I'd have to hand the phone to my husband before they'd stop calling me, stop harassing me this way. Lo and behold, my students responded by holding up their cell phones to show me all their dick pics. And I had to say, whoa. Yeah, so that's something that I hadn't really even grappled with until that moment in the classroom. So I get it now. I get it. So there's a legal term for gender harassment in the workplace. It's called hostile work environment. It could have been called sexualized work environment, but the courts are kind of prudish, so they called it hostile work environment. And of course, the message is boys club only, girls keep out. And as a result, the courts have rightly outlawed it as a form of sexual harassment, which, to remind you again, is a form of sex discrimination. Now, you're not going to be shocked to learn that male-dominated workplaces are especially prone to gender harassment. The military and the law enforcement come to mind as kind of prototypically abusive places for women. But horrible offenses also took place on Wall Street starting in the 1980s when women started to make inroads into the financial industry. And one of the books on your list is called Tales from the Boom Boom Room. And periodically throughout lectures, I'll sort of try to promote a book here and there to let you know that I found it engaging or particularly compelling. And Tales from the Boom Boom Room by Susan Antilla is one of those books. So as seen in the film, there's even a film called North Country. Women who work in blue-collar industries often cope with hostile work environments. For more than 20 years, the female miners who worked for the Evelyn Taconite mining company up in northern Minnesota were forced to put up with a hostile workplace, as seen in the trailer for the film.